Welcome everybody to this H3D Foundation and RAFIKI webinar. We're thrilled to have a panel of speakers for you today. And we're going to be talking about the RAFIKI Handbook for Planning and Hosting Capacity Development Fellowships, which is really designed to be a very useful, user-friendly research for everybody in our networks. So thank you so much for joining us. And I'm going to kick us off straight away by just introducing you, if you don't already know, to RAFIKI. 1 minute. There we go. So RAFIKI is a sibling project of GC-ADA, and many of you already know all about GC-ADA. But RAFIKI is an international consortium to strengthen drug discovery capacity in sub-Saharan Africa and build new avenues for European-African collaboration. And it's coming at a key moment to really support what we're doing in GC-ADA. And it's these 7 targeted actions, right? The first is fellowship visits. So we've designed, we're not just actually executing the visits, but we're also thinking about how can we unlock them for future institutions to be able to activate them and to do them on their own, kind of in a more streamlined and accessible way. We continue with our mentorship actions as well. So we're supporting early career growth in early career scientists and matching them with international experts around the globe. Our drug discovery workshops are also aimed at upskilling our emerging researchers for hands-on learning in their field and to broaden their understanding of the complete pipeline so that we're not working in silos. We have been working hard on data and compound infrastructure for efficient collaborative discovery. And so really what we're looking at there is working with CTD Vault and how can we utilize this platform to uplift and professionalize everything that we're doing so that we can have better collaboration across disciplines. We're engaging future funders in long-term sustainability actions. And there we're harnessing the power of our advisory board to be able to see how can we carry this beyond our 3-year funding cycle. And we've also been making online training available and accessible to all researchers beyond our RAFIKI consortium partners. And we're working hard at community building and targeting specific outreach efforts. And you will have seen, if you've been following our GC-ADA or RAFIKI posts, of efforts that we did in Nairobi recently at our annual meeting there. So this just gives you a little snapshot, but of course you can do further research yourself. We've got a website and we've got a LinkedIn profile and to tell you kind of more about what we're up to. But I don't want to waste too much time because I know there's going to hopefully be quite some rich discussion at the end of this session. So my job now is to introduce you to the panel. 1 moment. There they are. Aren't they a handsome bunch? Okay, so we're going to be bringing perspectives from across the fellowship cycle. We're going to start with Susan Winks from H3D Foundation. Susan has a background in medicinal chemistry and moved over to operations when she knew she just had to. That's my sentence, not hers. She is now the head of operations and business development at H3D Center and the executive director of H3D Foundation. She's the principal investigator leading the establishment of the GC-ADA network. And honestly, again, my sentence, if we could harness the power of her passion for African drug discovery, we could power a small city for sure. So she's a great person to have on your team. Ms. Shante Foinkes is the operations manager at the H3D Drug Discovery and Development Center at the University of Cape Town. With a background in business administration from the Graduate School of Business and experience spanning operations coordination, reporting, and human resources, Shante brings a strategic and people-centered approach to research operations and program management. She's particularly focused on strengthening operational efficiency and enabling impactful research, while also pursuing a Master's of Philosophy in Inclusive Innovation degree. Okay, so she's going to be talking about how to really design smooth fellowships so that they really work from a practical perspective. Alice Nikre is the Associate Director at Quality and Equitable Partnerships at Medicines for Malaria Venture. She manages all quality aspects from discovery to products being registered in the different countries around the globe. As a Swiss with Ghanaian origin, she has always been interested in contributing to the work being done in malaria endemic countries. So Alice is going to give us a window into the host's perspective. Suze Farrell is also going to give us another window. She is the capacity building and project manager at the DDU, the Drug Discovery Unit, at the University of Dundee. With a background in biochemistry from University of Dundee and public health from Imperial, and over 20 years of experience running training and managing educational projects. Suze brings a background in clinical education to the drug discovery capacity strengthening program in the DDU. She's particularly focused on the development of staff and students, supporting scientists working in drug discovery, especially those in resource-poor settings. Then Ms. Robi Chacha is an emerging researcher at Kemry and has a master's degree in medicinal microbiology with 5 years experience working at the interface of infectious diseases and drug discovery research. Her work focuses on tuberculosis, integrating molecular biology and natural products approaches to identify and optimize novel therapeutic strategies. She also supports program coordination and project management of drug discovery research initiatives under the leadership of Dr. Elizabeth Kigondu, and is a prospective PhD student. So she's going to be speaking from the perspective of being a fellow herself. And finally, Dr. John Woodland is going to take us home, as he is a research officer at the H3D Center and a fellow at the Institute for Infectious Disease and Molecular Medicine at the University of Cape Town. His research focuses on developing molecular strategies, including novel treatments and research tools to tackle the scourge of infectious disease with an emphasis on malaria. John is also committed to promoting science and strengthening scientific literacy in South Africa and across the African continent. So John was responsible for consolidating this handbook, so he knows it the most intimately of all, and he's going to be sharing the handbook and further resources with you. So I hope that gives you a window into what we're looking at today. I'm very excited about the session, and I want to hand over straight away to Susan to talk about from her perspective about strategy and intentional design of designing these fellowships. Can all the speakers just indicate if you want me to move slides?
Great, so are we on the next slide? Here we go. Fantastic. So thank you, Nicola, for giving such a great introduction to RAFIKI, and welcome to everyone on the call. This is an area that we're passionate about, and I think it'll come through in the panel today, just a shared passion for really making sure that we use these scientific fellowships to really strengthen and build capacity in Africa. So at its core, RAFIKI is about strengthening drug discovery capacity in Africa. So not just at the level of individual skills, but across the institution and the wider research ecosystem. So at the same time, we're aiming to build deeper, more equitable, more impactful collaborations between African and European partners. And we're also looking to align with the Grand Challenges African Drug Discovery Accelerator and build on those programs. I think the key for us is that these fellowships are not just short-term training placements. They are intentionally designed strategic visits. So we're aligning them to specific capacity gaps and building long-term institutional priorities. So when we look at it, we don't just ask the question, what can an individual learn? We're asking the question, what capability will remain once they return, and how is this going to strengthen the system as a whole? And with this strategic framing, we believe that both the handbook and the work we've done in the planning side of this has applicability beyond just drug discovery and beyond just our network and system. But these principles can be applied in any institutional planning of international fellowships, really looking at it from a strategic perspective, not just from a training perspective. Okay, so for us, the program has been guided by 3 core principles. The first is around dual benefit. And in fact, you can look at this dual benefit in 2 ways. The one way is there's obviously benefit to the individual, but there must also be benefit to the institution, their home institution, where we're looking beyond just training the individual. How do we benefit the institution beyond the fellowship? We're also looking at how can these fellowships have dual benefit between the home institution and the host institution, and really tangibly strengthening research capabilities and strengthening the systems, those ecosystems that are going to help us progress in our interdisciplinary projects. Our second principle is around equity and reciprocity. So these exchanges need to be co-designed between the partners based on mutual respect. Knowledge, experience, and learning are expected to flow in both directions, and we want to move away from an outdated model of capacity building where it's imposed upon the recipient. I think this is quite important, and is a theme that's coming through both in our handbook and in how we've approached the fellowships within RAFIKI. The third one is on sustainability. So fellowships are aligned to our long-term strategy for African drug discovery. So the emphasis is always going to be on retaining that expertise, embedding those systems, building the leadership, and sustaining the collaborations beyond the visit itself. And this is very key to making sure that we have the success that we're looking for in it. Another element that we spent a lot of time thinking about is that we're focusing on capacity development, not capacity building. So recognizing that there is already a dynamic, locally driven system in place. How do we build on that? How do we build on the strengths of that home institution rather than trying to impose something completely fresh? The fellowships have to be driven by a need and they must be strategic. So examples of these could be technical training, access to specialized infrastructure, exposure to best practice operational systems, development of project or grant management capabilities, or senior mentoring to establish entirely new institutional functions. But it's always driven around, what do we think this gap is? How do we fill it? How do we build on what's already in place? Our fellows could range from senior postgraduate students through to early career researchers, through to principal investigators, or even experienced scientists traveling from a well-resourced setting to a less well-resourced setting to help mentor a group of scientists and help to establish capabilities. And another key element of the program we put in place is that these are not open calls. We are designing these with intention. It's not something that people apply for. So the fellows that have been supported through RAFIKI, and in fact, there will be 21 fellows supported through RAFIKI over the 3 years, range across all these different levels. And all of them have been identified through structured dialogues between the home and the host PIs, really looking at how do we define the objectives, confirm the readiness, both of the fellow, but also of the institution to progress on whatever outcomes we've designed, making sure that they're realistic, measurable, sustainable. And then we also provide oversight at a consortium level to make sure there's coordination, we reduce duplication, and we maximize collective impact from all these fellowships. So this is our model of scientific exchange that is strategic, equitable, and designed for long-term impact. And this is what will come through if you look at our handbook. What I do want to say, though, is everything that we're putting into this, we believe that it is applicable in other ecosystems, in other networks, in other consortia, even in other areas. It's not limited to drug discovery. The principles here are much broader than that. When we started putting this together, we were building on our own personal knowledge and experience over many years. Certainly at H3D, we've been hosting fellowships for about 10, 12 years already. Dundee's been hosting fellowships for many years. So has MMV. We looked at what have we learned, what are the things that have gone wrong, and how do we provide guiding principles that are going to prevent this from happening again. Some of the anecdotes that we can share or lessons learned. For example, we've had examples of fellows, we've sent them off to go learn something and they've gotten a job at the other side of the world and never returned. Great for them, not so great in terms of strengthening the ecosystem. We've also had examples of fellows that have gone out, learned a skill, come back home and haven't had support to actually implement what they've learned. Again, great for them, but you don't see the lasting impact of that capability being developed. We've seen fellows arrive without a clear plan of what they're actually going to do when they reach this new research institution, and it leads to an uncomfortable and unproductive experience. Really, we need to put an emphasis on how to create a fellowship that's going to support someone to get the most out of this opportunity. There've been fellowships where you're not considering how they can apply the skills when they get back home. So if, for example, they learn to operate beautiful equipment, they get back home and that infrastructure is just not in place, they're left feeling despondent and unable to actually execute the project in the way they wanted to. We've also seen and learned firsthand that fellowships that fail to be human-centric and don't take into account the holistic experience of the fellow are not going to be successful. We need to think about the person that is going. What is their experience of it? Are they leaving children behind? Do they have family responsibilities that are burdening them? They're going to be exposed to a strange culture. They're going to lack their support systems. What is that experience after hours going to be for them during the weekends? Are they alone trying to figure out their way? And whatever that experience is, it's going to carry through to their ability to learn and retain the knowledge and the training that they're getting. So really looking to be human-centric and take into account the holistic experience is one of the key elements we also have been focusing on in our handbook. All right, so I think I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Shantae, who's going to take us through a lot of the practical considerations that are so key for ensuring successful fellowships. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Susan. I'm just waiting for it. Yeah, thanks, Nicola. So I will be talking through what needs to take place before the visits, so the budget planning and the institutional policies. In terms of budget and planning, it's important to refer to the institutional policies. You want to confirm the applicable guidelines for travel accommodation, subsistence and procurement. In terms of budgeting, it is important to consider the travel cost, the flights, your airport transfers, your visa, the travel insurance and vaccines if that is required in those countries. Accommodation, your costs should be aligned with the institutional guidelines. Your subsistence looks at your daily expenses, so those refer to your meals, your transport, or any other allowances within your policy as well. In terms of consumables, the lab or project materials that are required, including PPE for the labs, software access, and then any shared lab cost. Supervision and hosting fee. This considers budget for staff supervision, which should also be in line with your institutional policies. And then it's very important to clarify the roles and responsibilities, which the host institution manages all payments, and then just important to note that no budget reimbursements between the consortium partners. In terms of the institutional policies, some things to consider could include the following. So, for example, it's important to align the host institution's policies by confirming and following that the guidelines on travel, accommodation, and procurement are all aligned. Also need to consider that the visiting fellows may fall under other staff or student frameworks at the host institution. And then one more factor to just consider under the institutional policies is that compliance is very important. Compliance is key. So this means that we need to verify all the applicable policies in advance to also just ensure that there is consistency that is followed throughout the visit to avoid any delays or any administrative challenges. Next slide, please. So in terms of accommodation, stipend, and banking. So we want to ensure that the accommodation is within close proximity to the university because it's important to consider safety measures as well. So we like to ensure that our fellows, we house them, that is, it's closer to the university and within walking distance. The accommodation should include necessities such as your Wi-Fi, kitchen, on-site laundry, and cleanliness is also very important. In terms of accommodation of the stay, your duration should match your stay. So, for example, if it's short term, we'll consider hotels. If it's long term, we'll consider Airbnbs, university housing, or self-catering unit. And then also just to note that maintaining a list of vetted accommodation options is also good to have. That also just align with those institutions' requirements. In terms of the stipend, your daily subsistence cost should cover groceries, transport, meals, and any data or incidental expenses for the visiting researchers. We should consider the transport costs, accommodation facilities, and proximity. Ensure consistency and fairness across all visits is very important. And then something to note is to plan payments in advance and to account for processing times and foreign banking requirements. For banking, fellows require a bank account to receive payments. Options should be agreed before arrival and where possible start applications in advance, or you want to prioritize setup during the induction week. One of the operational failures that you want to avoid as far as possible is having delays in the stipends that are paid out to the fellows and the funds not reflecting the bank account on time. This happens for a few reasons, for example, such as documentation maybe not submitted prior to the visit in time or the documents are insufficient. So, for example, at UCT Finance, that could result in delays in the payments being paid to the fellows on time. which unfortunately means that the fellows then have to cover the expenses during their visit. Then the HR agreements. Next slide, please, Nicola. Thanks. So the HR agreements, NDAs, and ethics. In terms of human resources, it's important to confirm those specific HR needs. For example, if visas are required or any permits. Also want to ensure the onboarding processes are in place. Refers to HR, IT, system access cards. You have access to your buildings and your labs, as well as your laptop and things like that. Your NDAs, you want to implement a one-directional NDA to protect the host institution confidentiality where required. In terms of agreements, it's also important to consider a collaborative agreement or a visiting agreement. Clarify the ownership of the research output, for example, is it collaborative or institutional? And then it's important to comply with the host institution for the requirements for the visiting researcher agreements. For ethics, we want to consider and confirm whether the host institution, if any additional requirements apply, ensure the compliance with the institutional policies as previously mentioned, identify if a separate visiting research agreement is required, and then last but not least, we need to allow time for legal review and negotiation between the host and the home institutions ahead of the visit. Thanks, Nicola.
So over to you, Alice. Go for it. Thank you, Shante. And can I actually, before I hand over to you, just to remind everybody, we will be having a Q&A at the end, so please do write down your questions. Thank you. Over to you, Alice.
So I'd like to start with a simple reflection here. And this is something both of our recent fellows told us at the end of their placement. If I had known how short 4 weeks would feel. We, MMV, recently hosted 2 fellows in Geneva, Switzerland. Both of them stayed 4 weeks instead of the planned 6 to 8 weeks for personal reasons. And interestingly, both of them shared the same feedback. If I had known how short 4 weeks would feel, I would have planned differently. One of them even described the experience as stressful, trying to learn and contribute within the same that time frame. And really, this made us reflect on what it means to host a fellowship, not just from a logistically perspective, but also in terms of experience and impact. Next slide, please. What is often not visible is everything that happens behind the scenes before a fellow arrives to make this placement successful. We start by defining the scope and objective with the technical leads across both institutions. We also have to align on the expectation and what is realistically achievable within this short time frame. We also engage very early on with the fellow itself to ensure that we do have a common alignment and understanding of what is expected. There is a strong coordination effort that is happening between multiple functions. We heard Shante mentioning the HR, IT component, but there is also the financial aspect, the quality, and the project teams that will be involved with those fellowship. It is a very cross-functional effort, and alignment is absolutely key to ensure that the fellow has the smooth and meaningful experience. All of this is to ensure that the onboarding and logistics are fully in place before arrival. Next slide, please. So once the fellows arrive, the focus shifts from preparation to experience. We start with the structure onboarding, and here we mention HR, IT, quality, and key stakeholders, but the schedule of event of those onboarding is absolutely key, and it needs to happen very quickly on to enable them to become independent and being able to produce and contribute to the project teams. We then have the integration within the project teams, and this is how also they discover our ways of working, how we collaborate with each other, our standard operating procedures, as well as the policies that we are using within the organization. There is, of course, a technical guidance from the supervisor or mentor, and also as MMV works a lot as a cross-functional department with other team members within the organization. And we ensure ongoing support through regular check-ins with the fellows. But beyond the technical work, an important part of the exposure is the broader MMV environment and culture. We try to balance the structure with the flexibility so the fellows can both learn and explore. Next slide, please. But what really these experiences really taught us are few important lessons. First, time is often underestimated. And there is a real learning curve, not only from a technical perspective, but also from a personal perspective, and getting the fellow to know the environment in which they are in. And as soon as they feel a little bit more comfortable, it's the end of the placement. This brings me to the second point. It's very important to have very clear expectations, and this needs to be very clearly communicated to the fellow from the very beginning. As I mentioned earlier on, one of them mentioned that she felt stressed during the placement. This naturally brings into the third one, which is the well-being that needs to be actively supported, especially in shorter placements. And finally, last but not least, these fellowships are not a standalone experiences. They are the beginning of longer-term collaboration. Next slide. So for us, the key question is not only what we can achieve during this placement, but what this will enable afterwards. So continued collaboration, knowledge exchange, and ultimately, a more sustainable partnerships. A fellowship is not just a visit, it is a starting point. And I'll now hand over to Suze, who will share more on what this can look like in practice. Thank you.
Hi there. So continuing on, everybody before me has touched on these, but I think one thing to remember is not all placements are equal. So you will all be hopefully doing placements that are different lengths. You've got different objectives because you've set them in line with what you need as an individual and what your institution needs. So just remember that everything is unique to you and your institution. As hosts, we try to provide the best experience for you. But as Susan said, it's not about us giving things to you. We learn lots from your visit as well. We learn, you bring us new cultures, you bring us new ideas and new areas of research. And don't be afraid to talk about those things. We want to learn how you work and some of the barriers and experiences that you have in drug discovery, because we might have more resources than you, but drug discovery is not easy anywhere. So the barriers that you come across may not be unique to you. So do talk to us, to your hosts, to learn more about what's going on. Next slide, please. So just some advice. I think, yes, you have to work hard. You know, you've got a very good opportunity when you go on these placements, and you do need to use that opportunity. So work hard where you're there, but be realistic about what you can achieve. As Alice said, those placements, you think 4 weeks, I can do lots of stuff, or 8 weeks, 3 months. But it is harder. You're in a different lab, you're in a different country and a culture, and that can all be incredibly overwhelming for you. But that's okay. You know, you need to, where you can, build a support network, both in the lab and if you can out of the lab. Those are the people that will be there for you and tell you that whatever thing you're coming across is maybe absolutely normal in Scotland, whereas wherever you're from, it's not normal and it's very strange to you. So having lots of people to have conversations with and talk to is incredibly important. And I've put one note in there for anybody that comes to visit us. Please believe the Scottish people when we talk about the weather. We're not exaggerating. We maybe are a little bit, but whatever your hosts tell you about what it's like in their country, listen to them. You know, they might do as we do with a little bit of jest in our voice, but you know, we want to be able to prepare you for what you're going to experience when you're in your new country for however long. Next slide. So something else, make the most of your time. As I've said, you want to work hard when you're in the lab, but it's not just about the lab work. Visit other places in that country. That might be the only time you get to visit that country in your life. So go see whatever castles or mountains or whatever there is around about the city that you're based in. A lot of us are based in universities, so we have lots of groups and clubs that you can join, and I would recommend, if you can, to do that. There are often sort of country-based clubs at universities. So, you know, we have a Ghanaian society, we have a Nigerian society, and it is nice to have lots of people that you can talk to from home. In Scotland, we go to the pub quite a lot. It's often dark and cold, so that's how we get through the winter. But if you can, with your lab, you know, if people are going out for dinner, go and join them, enjoy your time there. I've put some photos up here, and the slides will be shared, and you can see some of the things that the team have done. And I think I saw Justice on this call. So the photo up in the top right is actually Justice entered a university-wide competition about his thesis, and he got through to the final there, and he's in the middle of that photo in the top right. So there are lots of other things that you can get involved in. It's not just the scientific work. And we have quite a big public engagement stream that we do at the university. So we have harangued volunteers, shall we say. So we've had trainees who've come through to a big university, a big museum in Edinburgh, and spent a few days with us teaching the public about what drug discovery is. And then down at the bottom, we've even made some of our trainees explain drug discovery to an animator, and we have used that animation in some of our content. So again, lots of things that you can do that aren't just in a lab with your chemistry. So next slide. What happens after a placement? So this is, I think, something that we all talk about. You know, we want to be able to continue to support you, but we need to know how best we can help. So be clear in your ask, in the same way that we're very clear about setting up what you should do in your placement. Think about that going forward. Can we help by mentoring you, providing scientific support? What do you think would help you the most, and can your host help with that going forward? You know, are there options for future collaborations? You know, are there options for funding further fellowships or other training opportunities? And obviously, I suppose the ultimate aim for everybody would be, could we develop joint research projects together? I think we talk about this quite a lot, but I wanted to give one specific example of the kind of things that we've done in Dundee. So we have had quite a few trainees from Ghana, from lots of different institutions in Ghana. And at the time, the university had a Grand Challenges Research Fund. So we applied to that for multiple awards, and I think we around about the £150,000 mark over multiple projects to support different things within Ghana. And one of them is we meet reps from each of the big institutions in Ghana, sort of on every 2 or 3 months, and talk about ways that the DDU could still support them. And that has been going since 2019. So it's a long-standing relationship, and it's the kind of thing that sometimes it's nice to provide a tangible outcome of what future support can look like. And this is just one, it's not the only answer, but I thought we would pass that on as an idea of how you can maybe continue to collaborate with your hosts beyond that placement. And now you've heard from all of us about how fabulous all the hosts will be, but now we'll hand over to Roby, who will give you an insight as to what it's like to be a fellow and to move to a different country for a little while. I'll hand over.
Thank you so much, and hi to everyone. I'm Robbie from the Kenya Medical Research Institute. I had an opportunity to be a fellow under RAFIKI at the Stellenbosch University under the Biomedical Research Institute. Next slide, please. So I got some surprises, and one of the positive surprises is I wasn't just expected to observe, I ended up contributing. For instance, I was involved in like so many lab meetings and institute meetings, even the seminars that are being held at the BMRI every Friday. I was included in that, and my supervisor then in the lab that I visited encouraged me to always like do a report on whatever was being presented. That clearly like put me at a position to understand some of the research that is being done within the BMRI, especially for molecular biology in tuberculosis. So I was treated as a collaborator and not just a visitor. My ideas and something surprising is that during these meetings, I'll be asked for my opinion in maybe the point of discussion that was being held. And that made me feel included. And then I was so overwhelmed by the number of women in research, especially in like basic biology research at the Stellenbosch University. That encouraged me that we are never left behind, and encouraged me and put me at a position that women are not forgotten in science. It was so empowering. Next slide, please. And then I got to experience some challenges, but I came to learn that growth comes with discomfort, especially like adapting in a new research culture where you're expected to give like weekly reports on whatever work you're doing and the progress that you're doing. And then it taught me to be open-minded. Like you should not shut out ideas from other people, because their ideas will always like improve whatever work you're doing. So I had to like undo, sort and do whatever thing I had known, and clear the mind to learn new information and new techniques. And then there was a small challenge in terms of accommodation, because we wouldn't, when I arrived, the accommodation that I got wasn't suitable, but it was empowering to really figure out a better accommodation that I felt was convenient for me from where I could easily access the lab. And the support from organizers was so seamless, because whenever I reached out, they will actually like they will actually respond promptly, and I got to get like good accommodation throughout my stay. And then all these builds resilience, independence, and confidence in me. Like trying to figure out new accommodation in a new country and figuring out how you get to campus in a new country is a whole new level of instilling confidence in me. Next, please. So what I've wished I've known before, and I can put this out for other fellows or any other person who is planning to do a fellowship somewhere, they should always like set clear goals on whatever thing they are going to learn. They should understand the host environment and prepare mentally and logistically. For me, it was an advantage to me, because my host were not so new to me. I had previously interacted with them, so it was easy to like get along. And then during weekly check-ins, you should actually like ask questions clearly, ask early, and then share challenges openly. Like if you feel you're not getting anywhere with your essay, you should just put it out. You should say it clearly so that you can get help. And then you should always like use feedback from the people, your mentors or your supervisors. You take it positively and don't take it as critique or you're being disliked. Take it positively because it actually helps you to grow. And then during after finishing the fellowship, especially if you're in the lab, you need to really work hard and put together a report for all the work that you've done, because it will help you reflect on your impact on whatever you've actually used your time correctly to learn whatever you went to learn. And then it will help you communicate your work and build future collaborations. And I can point out for these particular visits that I made, for the techniques that I was learning, that is generating CRISPR strains, we are actually putting together a paper with the lab that I was working in, and we have already submitted it to close and got reviews. So we are working on the reviews, and we hope to get the paper published. So so that's a very a clear point that as much as you go and visit, it's not only that you're going to learn, but you can benefit and collaborate further. Next slide, please. So for my final reflection, I would say that this was more than a fellowship. It was a transformation because I got to learn so many things that I hadn't learned. Usually for the TB drug discovery work that we do in natural products, we have always done like wholesale screening, but I got to learn a target-based screening where you actually like knock down genes, your target genes, and then try to treat with their compounds of interest and see how they act upon your target of interest. So this builds confidence in me, and it builds independence and strengthens. It's also strengthened an identity as a woman in science, because I can now confidently like do more TB drug discovery screening in our country, Kenya, specifically at the Kenya Medical Research Institute. And it actually gives us a very big hope in my group that is spearheaded by Dr. Elizabeth Kigondu, where we want to put up like a TB natural products, natural products screening center, where people from different places can bring it in their compounds and we can screen them against tuberculosis. So it's all this fellowship also expanded my networks and perspectives, and I'm so glad after the fellowship, the level of confidence that got instilled in me handling different things. My supervisor saw it's wise to also include me amongst her team of a project management and coordination of the RAFIKI activities. So it wasn't only a fellowship, but a completely transformation experience from my side. So thank you. This is a screenshot of the lab members in the lab that I went to, headed by Dr. Mashabela. And I'm so grateful for their time and everything that they provided me for. And for the RAFIKI and GCADA, I'm grateful. I couldn't be more grateful. than this. And to mention is that also it was a good experience generally because I'm also a mother and living away an 8-year-old and a 9-year-old child to go and do this. It gave me another perspective of how women in science can look into life and actually have open mind and still achieve. You can be a mother and still achieve so much in science. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roby. Wow, that was so inspiring. Okay, to tell us how this is going to be useful to you, I'm going to hand over to John.
Thanks, Nicola. Hi, everyone. I'm John. So you've heard firsthand there from Roby just how beneficial, mutually beneficial, how powerful these kinds of fellowships can be if they're intentionally, carefully designed, but also, as you've heard this afternoon, how much goes into them. So we're here to help, whether you want to host one of these capacity strengthening type fellowships yourself, or maybe you want to visit another lab and approach a PI and pitch one of these kinds of fellowships. Where do you start? How do you start bringing all the puzzle pieces together? And so we've combined our collective experience over the past years that we've hosted these fellowships. We've reached out to many of the fellows themselves to consolidate what worked, what didn't work for them. And we've collated everything into this handbook. You can see some screenshots here. And we're going to share very shortly with you the link for you to download the handbook to peruse it at your leisure. If we can go to the next slide, please, Nicola. Importantly, even though we're saying that we've put all these resources together, this isn't just a recipe. As we've heard, different fellowships will be different for different reasons. They need to be tailored, adapted according to the specific needs of the fellows, of the projects, of whatever the intention of the fellowship is. And so we've structured the handbook in a way that provides guidelines, templates for you to use and adapt to your own particular needs. So we start off just by sharing how we suggest the handbook should be used, a reminder of some of the principles that have underpinned these fellowships that have worked very well for us and that we believe are fundamental in designing intentional, strategic, beneficial fellowships. Next slide, please. I was probably a little bit enthusiastic with my animations here. So we've structured the handbook into 3 major sections: before the visit, during the visit, and then after the visit as well, because as you've heard, those are the 3 most important times at which different things are happening. So a lot needs to go into place before the visit. How do you intentionally and carefully design and plan the visit? Who are suitable candidates for these kinds of visits? How does one think about the budget, the logistics, the important communications? As we know, communication is central to everything we do. So how are we careful about the way in which we start to build these relationships? And then when the visit actually takes place, how do we ensure that the fellows feel welcome at the institution that they're visiting? What does that handover look like from the home to the host institution? And then as the visit progresses, we've heard how there will be feedback, adaptations of the closeout. What happens if there are problems? What are some of the frequently asked questions that have come up? And we've tried to list those in the handbook. And then after the visit, how do we ensure that this wasn't just a drop-in and a holiday experience, but how can we really adapt what has been learnt then to the home institution, make sure that we have a sustainable program in place? And then we've included also some appendices, some templates to help you really in a granular way think about what to take into account when planning that visit. We've included lots of examples, which should kind of get the neurons going, thinking about those confidentiality declarations that Shantae mentioned, for example. We've got some templates you can use and adapt to your particular needs. What a training report or feedback form might look like after the visit to ensure that everyone is heard and that the visits are optimized if this is something you're planning to do on more than one occasion. Next, please. So where can you find the handbook? So please take out your phones right away and scan this QR code. We also have a link But this is available on Zenodo, and we hope that you will find it useful and easy to read and well organized. Please do keep the conversation going, keep the dialogue going. Next, please. There are lots of ways of getting in touch with us. The link I see, Shantae's also just popped it in the chat, so you can click that right away. But please reach out to Rafiki directly if you have specific feedback, queries, questions. Nicola at the H3D Foundation, we have a website as well, as you've heard, also our LinkedIn channels. We're very active users, and that would be a great way for yourselves maybe to share the handbook with your own network, so that we can really, as we build and strengthen this ecosystem on our continent, make sure that we are really keeping the channels of communication as open and as visible as possible. And this is just the first of many. Watch this space. There is more to come. Of course, the focus today has been on these capacity strengthening fellowships, but lots more is to come. Can we put together, and we intend to, this kind of handbook for hosting drug discovery courses and workshops? You heard about how important sample management and curating a collection of compounds is, for example, for drug discovery projects. What are some guidelines or SOPs we can share for that? And that's all part of Rafiki, is not just doing everything that we've spoken about earlier, but also sharing it, lowering the activation energy, as we may say in chemistry, as much as possible to facilitate this for you and your own institution in your particular context. So please keep an eye on the space. There's lots more to come. But for now, please let us know what you think about this handbook, whether it meets your needs. If there's more material you need, reach out to us, and we'd be only too happy to help. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. So as you can tell, we've put a lot of thought into how this can be really useful. And so many of the members on the panel and in our group have so much experience that they're able to go, but 10 years ago, if I'd only known, if I'd only had access to this kind of thing. So we hope that it's a very user-friendly resource for you. I'm going to open up to some questions now. Everyone should be able to unmute themselves, so please do raise a hand using the raise a hand function. Alternatively, you can pop your question into the chat. And I see Susan has listed a wonderful array of opportunities that you can dip into, thinking about fellowships that you might want to explore going forward, because that might be the first question that comes up, right? How can I be a fellow? Okay, so these are some. We'll happily share these links with you afterwards as well. So one of the things that I'd like to maybe throw to Susan just to kick off the conversation, but anyone could answer, is a lot of institutions, and you touched on this a little bit in your presentation, but maybe you can unpack it a little bit more in depth. A lot of institutions are fearful of letting their favorite, top, best, most productive researcher go into maybe a more resource setting, or a first world environment or something like that. How can we rethink about it, and what are some of the really practical strategies that you can put in place to make sure that researcher does come back to you at least for some time and actually contributes to your institution?
Thank you, Nicola. That's a great question to kick off with. As I mentioned, we have, in the early days of H3D, had fellows that we've sent out for extensive training and have never returned to the continent. We like to see this ecosystem. It is a broad drug discovery ecosystem. You can have someone leave your institution and contribute with you and still give back. So see it more as brain circulation rather than trying to hold on to all your talent. That said, if you want to really design a fellowship to make sure that it is strategic and they're going to be able to implement it, the first thing is also to involve the individual in helping to design that and understand how this is going to feed back into their home institution. Most people are passionate about their home countries and about their environment and want to give back. So if you provide a framework to support that, whether it's making sure that they've got, for example, a postdoc position secured for when they come back, or a contract that allows them to come back and have a job, build these things in to really support it. We typically do look at, is that person planning to return to their home institution for at least a year? And that could be by virtue of whatever contract they have in place at the moment. But it's also about that co-creation and that follow-up and that planning with them. How do we support that implementation? Is there ongoing mentorship? How do we build this into their career journey? And I think, every now and then someone will leave and not return. And in the broader scheme, that's okay. We do need to be letting our brains circulate and move across the continent. And we find that people who have gone out and returned come back with such a depth of different knowledge, different understanding. And a lot of the time they come back and be like, wow, actually home is pretty great. All these things that we take for granted here, I now really appreciate them. But I'll hand over to anyone else if they want to add to this answer.
Okay, so panel, feel free just to interrupt as we go, but brain circulation is how we're trying to think about it, not the brain drain, but the circulation. And also just to add in Rafiki, thinking about having mentorship projects so that, you can bring that expertise back in even from afar. So your trainee can eventually evolve into a mentor themselves and actually contribute, which is something we see a lot of. Okay, so now maybe I'm going to throw out one more question, just as time is scarce. Feel free to raise your hand again if you'd like to ask a question. Is there a role for funders in this? How, and I'm going to open this to anyone on the panel, but how can we be thinking about the role of funders? We haven't really touched on it that much in this. Is there a way of strategizing, maybe even ahead of planning the visit? How do we bring in funders to support these initiatives to grow our institutions through fellowship design? Would anyone like to tackle that question? Otherwise, I'm gonna nominate Susan again.
I would love to. I'd love to comment on this because I think, here we are as the RAFIKI consortium, and we've only got funding for 21 fellowships, and it's not an open call. So here we are speaking about the handbook, but a lot of people on the webinar today or listening to this afterwards won't be able to apply for RAFIKI. So the question is, how can we take this handbook and use it to maximize the opportunity for everybody who wants this sort of opportunity? And I'm really hoping that some of the people on the call will look through the list of fellowships that are posted in the chat or through other ones and will think, if I apply for this fellowship as an individual, but I build in some of these strategic elements into it and really make a case for how this fellowship is going to improve, not just me, not just the institution I'm going to, but the institution I'm coming back to, it's going to make that so much more competitive in terms of their fellowship application. So I'm really hoping that we can use this this guide as individuals to strategically influence how these funders are going to be funding fellowships going forward. Sus.
I think the building of networks is really important. So in the sense, not in the funded sense, but a lot of the time when we apply for funding, say it's a project around TB, you can build in fellowships into that scientific project. But often we're asked, well, what is the connection with the people that you're including there? So we can't just go, oh, well, we're going to take some people from Africa or South America. We have to show that we've got a relationship with them often. So having these meetings, having these conversations, and actually just realizing that having a conversation now doesn't necessarily mean that there'll be a fellowship or an opportunity within the next 6 months, that it might be a longer term commitment to lots of conversations and applying for things that don't get funded, but eventually you will be able to hopefully, get funding and build that relationship more. And once you've got that relationship, and once you can show that you've hosted trainees from other institutions, weirdly it makes it a lot easier. So that would be my advice, that not everything happens straight away, but build relationships with other partners and hopefully ask them to build fellowships into any scientific project that they submit to a funder. Because the funders, everybody we speak to in the UK, really, they love listening to this. They think it's such a fabulous experience, but it is incredibly difficult to fund something like RAFIKI. This is, there's 7 institutions across Africa and the EU, that they're quite unusual to get these kind of infrastructure projects. So a lot of it does need to be tied into scientific applications.
Okay, thank you. Really, really great points that have come out there at the end. So our time is up, unfortunately, but the conversation can keep going. I've shared the links to our websites for Rafiki and GCADA, and all our social media links are also there. So please do get in touch with us. Don't feel left out. We're trying to be as inclusive as possible. And please let us know if you do use this handbook. How is it working for you? Give us feedback. We're probably going to review it with more information kind of later on in our funding cycle. And so your feedback could be really instrumental in making it kind of better for everybody. So it leaves it to me to thank our participants who've joined today. Thank you for coming back again and again and for leaving feedback on our feedback form. It's so appreciated. A huge thank you to our panel today. It was really lovely to have you all here and to hear different voices. Thank you so much for giving us your time, your passion, your expertise. And we'll see you soon for the next webinar. In the meantime, all the best, and thank you so much for joining us today.